Hello, welcome to another hardware bench video. This time I am putting together on the bench an Apex, I think it's Z590 motherboard. Republic of Gamers, best board you can get pretty much for overclocking. I've got a WD SN570 Blue NVMe drive. The usual Gillid Extreme thermal paste, and then in here, oh by the way, I paid £220 for this, delivered off eBay if you was wondering. And this CPU from CEX, sorry, that's where I get my camera gears, CEX was, I think that was 220 delivered, and it is the i9-10900K. So, first job I'm going to do before I put that in, I'll just turn my other camera on here, is fit the WD drive. I've took all the heat sinks and everything off for the NVMe port. Oh, here we go. And there is something as well inside the Republic of Gamers manual telling you if you do certain ones with certain chips you get certain speeds, but I mean it's 3,500 megabytes a second. I'm pretty sure PCIe 3 does that anyway. Let's just start this one recording. So I'm guessing here this is like a little heat sink thing what you have to sit it on. I looked in the manual, doesn't say you have to take it off. Here's the, oh, if you can see that, there's the drive. Okay, so I'm guessing it goes in that way. Well, guessing. I don't seem like it wants to go in. Maybe you have to take, it looks like you can put 2 in there, but I'm not sure. One thing I have got very limited experience of is NVMe drives. I haven't really done much in terms of fitting them. This is only the 3rd one ever that I've done. I think that's in. I think it is. That's it, that's in, it's popped. So yeah, that's in there now. And I undone a screw underneath that other bit, which looking at it I didn't need to undo, so I'll put that back. That was this little screw here. Wrong screwdriver. Yeah, sometimes you just have to learn as you go along, don't you? I'm always paranoid when I'm going to break something. Right, so that's that in. So the next bit is we'll just pop the heat sinks back on. Lined up. Probably not. Everyone's always fiddly, isn't it? Nothing's ever easy. Right, so we've got the heatsink on. Apparently there is some more NVMe drive slots under this big heatsink here, according to the manual. But I think you have to have an 1100 series CPU or something to use them at full speed. Plus my idea here is I'll have the graphics card there, and then I'll have an extra little fan that blows heat on this heatsink here, because in my testing, usually if you just pop the NVMe drive in, they usually end up running really hot, whereas if you can get an extra fan blowing on the heatsink, that cools them down no end. So definitely worth doing. And the reason I've done this as well is because it's going to be a flipping nightmare to try and do anything too much once you've got coolers and graphics cards and things in the way. So next bit, I've got to take off the see, I've perhaps stitched myself here, look. Been a little while since I've put the Noctua cooler on. So there you go. Tip: before you try and put a Noctua cooler on or the fitting kit, make sure you put the CPU in first, which I didn't. So I'll just unscrew that there. Yeah, it looks like I'm going to have to take them both off. But I did a quick practice fit just to make sure I was going to have plenty of clearance for the graphics card. Not normally a problem on newer boards, but if you get like the Z170, Z270, you go and put a big old Noctua NH15 on, which this is going to have, and you'll end up with it fouling where the graphics card's going to want to sit. I mean, I have sort of bodged it round so they'll do it, but it's not really what you want to be doing in an ideal scenario. Right, so let's get the i9. There's your little tabs. Looks as though that's popped in there properly. I think it has. Right, cool. So that's in. So put the cooler bracket things back on. Hang on, have I done it the right way around? Can't remember. Yeah, must have. Oh, no. Goes that way. Just to be on the safe side, I'll just double check because I don't want to be. No, wrong way. So it goes that way then. So little tips, a lot of the time when you're doing this stuff, just keep checking stuff as you go, because there's nothing worse than having to keep undoing everything and redoing it. Yep, that's spot on. That's cool. This bracket set came off my 8700K, and that's literally sat on there for about 5.5 years, so it gives you an idea how long it is since I've done a modern Intel build. Right. Shouldn't really need to do these up super tight. Just doing where your finger and thumb should be tight enough. Well, depends on how strong you are, I suppose. But I would say that's in there, nice and secure. Next bit, everybody loves all important thermal paste. I go for the GC Extreme because it's fairly cheap for a performance paste, but it does give pretty good performance. Does need a little bit of time to go off. That's probably the only thing I'd say with it. And what I also, that cooler's not brilliant. What I like to do, paranoia, because I like to know that all the heatsink spreader's got a bit on it. So I do like to spread it about a bit. But you can probably realistically just get away with putting putting a P in the middle or whatever. Just what I do, not necessarily right, not necessarily wrong. I'll just put another bit on there, that'll be alright. Right, that's plenty. As long as it's got a bit over the whole thing. Right, so now pop it on. Now what you might have noticed is it's only got one screw on this, and the reason being, you know what, I can't remember what the reason was. I know there was a reason why I did it like that, but I can't remember what it was. That was back in the overclocking days when I was taking stuff on and off all the time. I found some sort of advantage to not having one side attached to the cooler, but I can't actually remember what it was now. It's so many years ago since I took it off. Right, that's the cooler on. Bit dusty. There you go, that should be alright. Bit dust won't hurt. Okay, well, it's sometime later. The i9 is running nicely. I've run a Cinebench with it to make sure it's not getting too hot, so obviously did the thermal paste okay. I'm just downloading Puget Bench DaVinci Resolve benchmark, so I'll do a few little tests and that, see how it stacks up as a video editing machine up against the old 3700X. Probably for that I won't bother overclocking it, I'll just get it optimised. There's a program on the disc which it might have had, I never used a Hero disc, but it's called RAM Cache 3, and I've done a little bit of testing with Crystal Mark on the hard drive speeds, and it does look like if you set some of the RAM aside as a cache, it can actually improve system performance, possibly in some instances, so I shall bench that and see if it works. But yeah, I mean, otherwise so far it's yeah, it's looking pretty good. It's running fairly quiet, it's running reasonably cool. The the NVMe drive, it turns out the socket that I used uses some of the PCIe lanes, so if you was using multiple graphics cards you wouldn't have quite the bandwidth on them, but as I'm only using one I had to go in the BIOS and set that all up because the normal NVMe slots are further up, but I wanted to have it so I could put additional cooling on if it ran hot. But to be fair, the heatsink on this seems a lot better than it was on the Hero. And when I've been testing it, it doesn't seem like it runs that hot, about sort of 40 odd degrees max. So yeah, it's worked out alright. I shall obviously do some videos with some tests on the build, probably bench some graphics cards. I'm getting Starfield soon, so I shall probably do loads of hardware testing for Starfield, because let's face it, that's now the benchmark, and it is the crisis of the 2020s. So yeah, it'd be rude not to get it if I'm going to put myself out as a hardware bencher. So yeah, I hope you look forward to seeing some of that. I hope you like the video that you've seen. If you do, give it a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe. If there's any suggestions of anything you want to see as well, put it down in the comments and I'll see what I can do. Thank you very much. I've got to put the graphics card in. I don't know which one to go for to start off. I think I might opt for the GTX 1080. The reason being because that's the most powerful card I've got that's NVIDIA, and because if I use my Intel Arc, I don't bet that's going to be a pig to get that out, isn't it? At the end. And we'll pop it in. It's not really locked, to be fair, so that's probably good. Right, yeah. The Intel Arc is basically, there's no drivers that will work with the Intel Arc, so this is the basic system. I'm now just going to hook it up to the power supply. I've got to install Windows and do all that, so there you go. That's the basic putting it together.